The DOM API has methods and properties. Developers use global objects like document and window as entry points to any API. So this simply means that using of global objects like document and window is not only specific to JavaScript, but to any API, like most API. So this stands like a norm or a standard for accessing them as an entry point. If you want to access any element in an HTML page, you always start with accessing the document object. Because of why? Because the document object represents your web page. So to manipulate an HTML element, you first need to select an element. So if you want to manipulate an element, you first need to select that element. What does that mean? See this. If you want to manipulate any element, you first need to select the element, okay? This is the element I want to manipulate. And then how do I manipulate it? I first need to select it. And how do I select it? By getting an ID that is associated with such element. So let's move on and talk about how you can select HTML elements. There are different methods through which you can select an HTML element. The most common and used one is this: get element by ID. There is another one that is called get element by tag name. You can see my editor is already suggesting it for me. And we also have another one. If you have a class, you can also get by class name. And in this case, if I want to get by class name, then it will just be code output, because this is what corresponds to my what class name. And with this now, let's check if this will work like the way we work with ID. Now you can see this, that nothing is changing yet. Let's just check. Hello. Now you can see that this is not bringing in any result, and that is because inner HTML. Now, which definitely means that this is not one of the property that you can use with a class name. So I hope you are getting it. So because you already know a property does not mean that that same property works for all the methods that you can access when working with the DOM. Then we have another one that is called query selector. So document the query selector. So if you want to select a query in your code and want to work with it, then use the query selector. And we also have another one called query selector HUD. You can see, so that's the second method. So it's find elements that matches a CSS selector, while the query selector find the first element that matches the CSS selector. So these are the methods through which you can select HTML element and work with them. Now note that the document object is the owner of all other objects in your web page. So even if you have other objects in your web page, the document object is the owner of all of them. So how can you access element content? When you want to access the content of an element, how can you do that? So I want to change this back to what was here before. Get element by ID, and then pass in ID demo. Now look at this. How do you access the element content? I can access element content by using the inner HTML method. Inner HTML, is not a method but a property that you can use to access a value, because you use property to access value while you use method to perform an action. So this is a property that you can use to obtain or interact with an element. So you can use inner HTML as a way of accessing the content of an element. So I do something like this. Hello. Now you can see immediately it gives me the output, which means that this can be used to access the content of an element. Another one is the text content. This is another property that you can use to access element content. So you can see text content. So I do something like hello. You can see this also immediately gives me an output. So these two properties can be used to access elements content in JavaScript. Now, how do you access element attributes? If you want to access element attributes, there are a few ways through which you can do that as well in JavaScript. For example, there's an attribute property called attribute. You can see it. Element dot attribute. This is one. This can be used to change the attribute value of an HTML property. And then another one is this style dot content, right? Oh, sorry, not content, style dot property. So this is another property that you can use to style an HTML element. So let's talk about how you can change the element attributes in JavaScript. There's a way through which you can change the element attributes in JavaScript, and it's just by setting the attributes of such elements. So if you set an attribute of such elements, then you can change it in JavaScript, even though it's not giving any output because it's not intended to give an output as it is. So let's also look at how you can manipulate structure when working with the DOM in JavaScript. So if you want to manipulate structure, there are different ways through which you can do this. For example, you can create an element. So that means if you want a new element, then you can create it in your JavaScript. So if I don't want to use what I have, so I can do document.create elements. You can see it. What do I want to create? Probably maybe I want to create something like maybe H1. I say hello something. I'm just using this as an example. Now, this is actually not showing anything, as I do not expect it to show anything, which is fine. But I'm just showing us how this method can be used in JavaScript when working with DOM. So this is one method. There's another one. You can manipulate structure by removing child. If you want to remove a child, you can use the remove child method. If you want to add, you can use the append child method. You can see this. And if you want to replace an HTML element, you simply call on the replace child method, as this will allow you to be able to manipulate the structure of your HTML elements. And also, how do you add event handlers in JavaScript to HTML elements? You can add an event handler to your HTML elements by using the onClick method. The onClick method allows you to add event handler code to an onClick event. So what does that look like in JavaScript? So let's say you have something like this, document.getElement by ID. And what is the ID in our case here? I have demo set as my ID. Now, .onClick. So this is an event handler method function, and then whatever it is that I have. So I can pass the handler function here. So if I put my function here, then anytime I click on this button or whatever it is that I have inside my code, then it can react once it is being pressed or once it is being clicked on. So the event handlers allows your elements to react to events such as mouse over or mouse click in your JavaScript code.